How movie text unleashed my coworker's meltdown. Hello Reddit, I'm back, but this time with a bit of story time. I am a 22-year-old female and have been driving tractor trailers for my job for the past year. As with some trucking jobs out there, my job consists of half driving and half warehouse work, with some minor fluctuations depending on the customer's requests. My two coworkers and I, one supervisor and one forklift operator, often chat when there is downtime and catch up on each other's lives. This past Friday was one such day. Our supervisor had to leave early that day. The forklift operator, we will call him JC, the jerk coworker, and I had finished all of the tasks for the day and were chatting about zombie movies. I have been a long-time prepper, and JC had an interest in it as well. We talked about a movie I had seen a while back that was about zombies, and the conversation was as follows. I said, "Man, I cannot remember the name of that movie." JC replied, "Well, let me know when you do. It sounds like an interesting movie." I answered, "Okay. I will just text it to you when I remember it." JC said, "Okay. I will check it out then." I thought nothing of this, and we continued talking about more stuff hits the fan topics. Over the weekend, I remembered the name and sent a text to him saying the movie I mentioned was called Movie Title and carried on with my day. The next day, Monday, I showed up and was chatting with the supervisor about what the day would be like when JC came in. He stormed in and stopped outside the office where the supervisor and I were talking and started to go off on me. He told me, "You ruined his life, and what the heck is wrong with you?" I was stunned and not sure what was happening. He then started telling me, "I told you not to contact me outside of work," which is partially true, but also not really adhered to. We have sent maybe 6 texts since we started working together and never had any issue with it. So while yes, he did tell me and the supervisor as such, it has never actually been an issue until today. Turns out his hyper-jealous and insecure wife saw the text and packed her bags that morning. So his reaction was to come to work and scream at me for something he did not seem opposed to when I said I would be doing it. I ended up leaving early since it was clear he was not going to calm down, and later on, I was told he was sent home due to his aggressive behavior, not violent, just really hostile. Later that day, I came back to work at my supervisor's request to talk about what had happened. I explained the above story, and she told me it was not your fault. When this had happened, I was a sobbing mess, thinking I had done something wrong and that I was responsible for his wife leaving him. Anyway, I am far beyond giving way to that line of thinking. I know sending a text with a movie title is no reason for his wife to walk out unless there were other issues. After I talked with my supervisor a bit, she told me that JC wanted nothing to do with us outside of work. She said, "Home stays at home, work stays at work." So, my lovely supervisor proposed we give him exactly what he wanted. She told me, only discuss work-related topics with him going forward and do not interact with him unless it is necessary. She planned to do the same. The next part one was told about just a few hours ago, and I am honestly relieved to hear. The next day, I took the day off and decided to let things settle a bit since I was still feeling a bit guilty. Turns out both my supervisor and manager were there with him today. They talked to each other normally and carried on the day like nothing was amiss. My supervisor told JC, outside of work-related topics, "I will not engage with you," and he agreed. She kept her word and only told JC what needed to be done for the day. No banter, no jokes, no anything, just work like he wanted. Less than 5 hours into his shift, he handed her back the keys and quit. I guess he did not like the atmosphere he created. Part of me wonders what really happened that morning. Was it really just a text that sent her over the edge? Did she find something on his phone after going through it or something? I guess we will never know. Anyhow, that is my little bit of petty revenge, or rather, my supervisor's. I am so happy to have a lady like her on my side. I told my coworker she had to work, now she's ignoring me. My coworker A is one of those types who never contributes to group projects. You all know the type, the one you have to carry through everything. So at our last team meeting, we were dividing up what needs to be done. Our manager assigns her a job and her responses. "What? Me?" To which I admittedly rather snarkily say, "Well, you have to do something." Didn't really mean to say it, it just popped out. I will admit this wasn't the nicest comment, but 3 years of working with this kind of person grates so badly. For this, she has been acting like I don't exist for 3 weeks. By which I mean if I say something, total blank. Try to hand something to her, she acts like I'm totally invisible. I might as well not exist. Today it got worse because she found out I went behind her back and redid her part for the project because the deadline is 2 days and it was actually unusably bad, For context, we're in a team of fewer than 5 people, and all of this is very obvious in our office. For the first few days, I gave her space assuming things would blow over and she would move past it. By the end of the second week, I decided, fuck it, I'm not breaking first because this is ridiculous. One of our other team confronted her on how she's acting and how she's making everyone uncomfortable by keeping this up, because it's affecting the whole office. She told them she needs more time because apparently it hurt her so badly that I spoke angrily to her. Here's where I might be the asshole. Had she decided to approach me about it, I likely would have apologized, but I have made no attempt to do so to her since I find this behavior completely insane. I've had many instances of being annoyed by her or someone else in our office, and I've been either able to talk my way through them or else just move on from it and get over it. And so I throw myself upon the judgment of the court. Am I the asshole? Editing to add, manager saw her work, 5-minute chat GPT style, and reassigned it to me, which is why I ended up doing it. My corrupt boss threatened my career. Now I'm shutting her down. I worked years ago in a highly regulated field. My boss, Karen Dipshit, was always cutting corners and making knee-jerk decisions that were not based on regulations. I notified the chain of command when Karen became dangerous, but I was told, this is the way it's always been done. After my third attempt to stop the business from committing borderline criminal acts, I quit. I did not want my name attached to the organization. I ended up in a job where I now enforce regulations, and we sometimes take away a business's license if we find egregious violations. I work in a different state, so I thought Karen was not my responsibility, and that karma would come one day. Fast forward 5 years later. Due to egregious issues and consumer complaints, enforcement is sending every available person to Karen's doorstep to review her files. I get to spend the next 4 weeks combing through her records and tallying the amount she owes in fines. I dug out my old written complaints to her boss, and guess what? She still uses many of her old tricks. It is looking good for Karen's business. I do not normally gloat, but damn, this woman once told me, you are at risk of losing your career if you do not fall into line. Now I am training her staff on how to actually do the job, and they are grateful. It is surreal. Silenced, but not defeated. I once worked as a therapist in a juvenile facility for boys. Most people think this would be a rough job because of the boys, but no, I loved those kids. I hated the people I worked with. None of the people working there, besides the therapists, thought therapy was valid. They viewed us as a waste of time and space, even the people running the place. I made a sexual harassment complaint against a man working there, not knowing that he was related to the guy who ran the place. Of course, nothing happened to him, but I became public enemy number 1 after that. They were obviously trying to make things bad for me, but I persevered because it was COVID and I needed to survive. Once things calmed down, I decided that it was time to leave. It was the end of June, and a lot of my boys would leave the program in July. So I told the head of therapists that I would leave at the end of July. That way, I could help get those kids out, train the remaining therapists on the kids who would still be there after I left, and it would give them time to find a new therapist. She was grateful and said it was kind of me to do this. That was on a Monday. On Friday, they called me into their office to tell me that they accepted my resignation that day and I could leave. They seemed surprised when I accepted that with a smile. I realized then that I could easily get my vengeance by being silent. Since I was no longer an employee, I was not allowed back on the grounds. Someone had already packed my things for me. They did not let me say goodbye to my boys. So they got what was coming to them. What they didn't know was that our IT guy was terrible at his job. He was supposed to create a shared file on each therapist's computer so that we could put our files there, and all the therapists could have access. The problem is, he didn't do it correctly on my computer. And even though I told him this, he never fixed it. Due to this, I just saved everything on my computer. But they would need my password to access it. I never gave it to them. I met with some of the therapists who still worked there for lunch about a month later. They were happy that I was doing better than when I was working there. Apparently, the head of therapists had to take over most of my caseload and had quit. She had only been in the job about 3 months. I had lasted over 2 years. They had to rewrite a ton of my paperwork since they could not get access to my computer, which helped cause her frustration and final decision to leave. After seeing how I was treated, most of the other therapists left soon after. The only one who remained was terrible at her job. In their desperation to replace the therapist fast enough, They even rehired a therapist who had left previously, one who was so bad at her job that she was deeply hated by every kid on her caseload. Funny thing about that therapist, she was cruel to me. And I got my vengeance on her as well. Her husband began flirting with me on Facebook. I let it go on for a bit, and then I sent her pictures of his messages to me. I don't know what happened after that, but I assume their marriage had some difficulties. It seems that the place never really recovered when it came to the therapy department. And the sad part is, that's where most of their funding came from. Funny how people put down those they truly rely on. My old boss's assistant made my life miserable, so I got creative. This was in the late 2000s. I was just out of college and had gotten a job working in an office. My boss was very cool, but her assistant, let's call her Suzanne, was horrible. She was a nepotism hire, as were most people in that company, so she wasn't great at her job. But I think she tried to overcompensate by being really aggressive whenever she asked for things. She was very protective of her duties and took them uncomfortably seriously. It was like Dwight and Angela from The Office rolled into one. She made my job hell while I worked there. She would always tell me to drop everything to help her with what she called, quote, something for the director, end quote, which was basically all of her work, since she was the director's assistant. She constantly criticized my work with the most trivial feedback, even though she couldn't do any of it herself. And if I ever refused one of her requests because I was too busy, she would go around telling people that I had an attitude problem. She even told people I was sexist and said I was insecure taking orders from a woman. That wasn't true at all. Both the director and my direct supervisor were women, and I worked very well with them. On top of that, she would casually say racist things. For example, she once said she always assumed our black coworker, quote, pulled himself up by his bootstraps and worked his way out of the ghetto, end quote. Even though his family was wealthy and he came from overseas. He had a fancy accent. I don't know what she was thinking. I'm Asian, and she would always come to get me to help with tech stuff, saying things like, quote, your people are better at that sort of thing, end quote. And every time she saw me, she would say, quote, hero, end quote. During my last week at the job, she pulled me into her office with a long list of things she wanted me to fix on her computer before I left. I was already swamped trying to offload all my tasks, but she passive-aggressively pressured me into it. A little background here, the IT department hated her. She called them nonstop every single day to complain that her computer was too slow and demanded they make it faster. She refused to listen when they told her it was just old. She would yell things like, quote, I see ads all the time saying if you install this your computer will be faster. Can't you do something like that? End quote. If you remember those virus-laced pop-up ads from back then, that's what she meant. Eventually, the IT team got so sick of her that they told her a fake fix. They said, quote, if you click the toolbar and drag the window around the screen while you wait for something to load, it'll make it work faster, end quote. They just wanted to give her something to do, so she'd stop calling. So on my last day, while I was on her computer fixing things, I also opened her Word and email programs and changed a bunch of autocorrect settings. Her name, slightly altered for deniability, was Suzanne Clipper. I changed it so that whenever she typed it, it would autocorrect to Susie Clipit. She started every email with Dear, so I changed that to autocorrect to Dearest. She always signed off with regards, so I changed it to Regards. I also changed grammar basics, like your to autocorrect to your, there to there, and so on. I don't remember the full list, but I frantically did as many as I could while she wasn't looking. A coworker of mine, who worked there for 2 years after I left, told me that one day she called him into her office and asked if he could undo whatever was happening to her computer. He told her he didn't know how. She then called IT, and they told her they couldn't help her either. Instead, they gave her the dumbest workaround ever. They told her to write the full email out, then type all the words she wanted to replace into the URL bar of her browser, and copy and paste them back into her Word document or email. My coworker said he would randomly walk by her office for months after that and see her slowly typing one letter at a time, as if doing it carefully would stop the replacement from triggering. Then she would yell out in frustration as the word changed when she carefully pressed the space bar.